It took you 30 years to get everything right, and the system tells you that is enough. You show up, you save, you maximize 401k as much as you can, and you keep telling yourself that retirement is the finish line for life to eventually get better. This is the finish line for millions of Americans now. Not freedom, but the trap they enter with a smile on their faces. Because no one shows them the full picture along the way. We're not talking about people who can't save anything. We're talking about people sitting on $300,000, $500,000, or even $700,000, who silently fear watching their decades-long project collapse without warning. Today, we're in an area that most financial advisors don't touch. The psychological breakdown caught retirees who thought they were well prepared by surprise. The healthcare bill that broke out in 2026. Social Security math should really remind anyone at the 45 to 65 window. Identities that never appeared on any retirement brochures collapsed. The new phenomenon is spreading rapidly across the country, forcing retirees to return to work just to keep the lights on. None of this is the end. It is all true. And those who see these things clearly are those who have not been destroyed by them. Start with math, because math itself is hard to accept. Americans ages 55 to 64, the closest and most prepared retiree by any measure, have median retirement savings of $185,000 to $244,000. That sounds like a real number. That sounds a bit like it. But financial planners generally agree that a comfortable retirement requires 10 to 12 times the final annual salary you saved before you stopped working. While a person with an annual income of $700,000 needs at least $700,000 to $840,000, the gap between where people are and where they need to be is not small. It is a canyon that most people standing on the edge of cannot see to the bottom. But the median population closest to retirement age is not even a chilling number. The number holding you back comes from the Economic Policy Institute, which found that the median savings of all working-age adults in the United States are $955. $95.5. Not a typo, not a rounding error, is just the raw midpoint of American positions, meaning that half working-age Americans save less than they save for the future. Bankrate S 2025 Retirement Savings Report confirmed that 56% of Americans said they lagged behind in saving, and that 58 million working-age people, 32% of the working-age population, had no retirement savings at all. None of this is abstract. All of this lives in real people. After 28 years as an elementary school teacher in Ohio, Linda donated money to her every day. 403B. By the time she sat down to get her retirement calculator at 62, she had saved about $210,000 for a small mortgage and planned to retire at 65. At her current spending rate, her savings will run out at 79. Her life expectancy, according to her calculator, is 84. Nothing for 5 years, until Social Security almost covered utilities. Linda didn't fail. Linda didn't overspend or make reckless choices. Linda is a middleman who sits across from you at every family dinner, quietly wondering what happened. That was before the dollar on her medical bill. Every financial seminar, every glossy retirement magazine, every YouTube video has a portrait of a couple on a sailboat. They don't spend enough time studying what happens next. And this omission does real harm to real people. Retirement healthcare costs are higher than almost everyone's plan, large enough to undermine sound financial strategies. According to HealthView Services, the average medical cost for the entire retirement period, from age 65 to death in 2025, is $172,500 per person. HealthView Services is one of the most cited sources of retirement healthcare projections. Per capita, for married couples, the figure is $345,000 higher than the total projected cost, due to the acceleration of costs in 2026, not 2026. Medicare Part B premiums jumped to $202.9 a month in 2026, an increase of $17.9 over 2025, equivalent to an increase of nearly 10% in a year. Part B is just the beginning. A typical retiree's actual monthly bill is $600 to $800, sometimes well above that, depending on health history and location. That is where the structure of the problem becomes clear. Most retirement plans are based on a mathematical calculation of income minus expenses. Social Security checks arrive and savings, withdrawals fill the gap, which is theoretically balanced. What the model completely ignores is that healthcare costs accelerate with age, hitting hardest at the exact moment when income is fixed and savings are exhausted. Conflict is not gradual. By the time most people realize this, they have absorbed the full impact. Retiring before age 65 makes matters worse, because Medicare eligibility does not begin until age 65, while private insurance for people in their 50s or early 60s on the open market could reach more than $600 to $1,200 a month in 2026, depending on state and health status. That means money leaves savings before retirement lifestyles begin. Healthcare is the single variable most likely to destroy a plan that looks perfect on paper, and it is largely invisible until it suddenly disappears. The number that almost everyone in this age group is counting on is worth an honest conversation because it is not going in the direction most people plan. As of 2026, Social Security retirement benefits averaged about $1,976 a month, about $23,700 a year. That clears the federal poverty line for a person making about $15,000 a year, but does not give anyone a truly comfortable retirement. However, Bankrate found that 52% of Americans who have not yet retired want to rely on Social Security to cover necessary expenses, not as a supplement, but as a main pillar. The problem with this dependency is that pillars have an open expiration date. The Congressional Budget Office released a report in early 2026 confirming that the Integrated Social Security Trust Fund is now expected to run out in 2032, a full year higher than previous estimates. Under current law, benefits would face automatic cuts of 24 to 28% across the board if Congress did not act. The responsible Federal Budget Committee has attached a real dollar figure. Retirees will face an annual benefit cut of $18,100 when the cuts arrive, which amounts to a fundamental reorganization of their overall retirement income for ordinary recipients. If a 55-year-old watches the show now and plans to retire at 65, he will start receiving Social Security 3 years before the expected exhaustion date. 3 years of full benefits, and then a 24 to 28% cut, which did not appear in any of the financial planning manuals they received. Congressional proposals now circulating include raising the full retirement age to 69, which means that people in their 50s today may see significant changes in the target bar before reaching the target. For many beneficiaries, higher Medicare premiums will eat more than 25% of Coca-Cola's share in 2026. A quarter of annual raises disappear before touching anyone's bank account. The Boston University Retirement Research Center found none of this is speculation. All of this is documented and operational. So far, it is all in finance and money matters. But the dark side of retirement, even those with financial reserves, can be caught off guard, regardless of account balances or Medicare premiums. 30 or 35 years of work means 35 years of work, depending in part on what you do. Occupations include social status, daily structure, why you wake up at a particular time, the people who know your name, and the background where your expertise really matters. When that disappears, not gradually, but overnight, the psychological consequences can be severe, and studies document troubling details. According to a study published in the Journal of General Mental Health in 2022, retirement can trigger an identity crisis through changes in personal and professional identity, and many retirees experience real psychological distress in the first 12 to 24 months after leaving their jobs, not because of financial collapse, but because of the collapse of self-consciousness. That is what no one is selling you at retirement seminars. A 2025 Upstreet UD found that 40% of American adults now feel lonely, up from 35% a few years ago. Specifically, a third of older adults feel lonely at some point or usually in the past year. According to data from the University of Michigan, the World Health Organization has identified loneliness as a global health problem and linked it directly to depression, cognitive decline, and an increased risk of premature death. Cognitive decline is what people really need to hear. A study of the Whitehall 2 cohort published in the British Medical Journal, found that verbal memory declined 38% faster after retirement than before. The mechanism behind this finding points directly to the structure, stimulation, and social engagement that work provides. And, without real substitutes for these inputs, the neurological consequences will be faster than most people expect. The New York Times reported this directly in March 2025, reporting that retirement may lead to significant changes in brain health, including cognitive decline and an increased risk of depression. Robert retired at 67 from a senior engineering position at a manufacturing company with $680,000 in savings, paid housing and Medicare. By every financial measure, his retirement was a success story, and by every external measure, nothing went wrong. For 18 months, his wife was deeply concerned that he slept most of the time until 10 a.m., stopped calling friends, gained 25 pounds, and turned inward. His doctors eventually diagnosed him with moderate depression. The retirement system worked perfectly on paper, but it quietly fell apart internally. Robert's case is not unusual. The frequency of this among retirees without a mental transition plan should change how this age group thinks about what preparation actually means. Back to financial mechanics, because another force is quietly dismantling retirement plans. For 2026, there should be room for itself in this conversation. A 2025 Live Career survey found that 9 in 10 older workers said inflation and tariff concerns had reshaped their retirement plans. 9/10, not disagreement, but near agreement, anxiety rooted in real math. Inflation affects retirees and workers differently, a distinction that is more important than most people realize. When you're still working, your income can grow, at least in theory. Raise, change jobs, work overtime, change careers. When retirement income comes from savings withdrawals and fixed social security checks, there is no adjustment mechanism available. Every percentage point of inflation is a direct decline in real purchasing power, and it is rising year by year. Under conservative assumptions, $50,000 a year in retirement income. The average inflation rate is only 3%, lower than many economists predict for the current environment. In a decade, that $50,000 will have the same purchasing power as today's $37,000. 20 years later, the price dropped to about $27,700. Spending has not changed. The world is only getting more expensive year by year, and income has not changed at all. The specific categories that hit retirees hardest, healthcare, food, housing, energy, have historically been inflating faster than the general CPI, meaning that the 70% income substitution rule that financial advisors have been citing for decades is calibrated for a low inflation world. In 2026, this hypothesis is being tested by a very different reality, which is untenable for a large number of retirees. Here are some data points that tell the story more clearly than anything else in the video. A word that barely existed a decade ago, not tired, now describes a measurable and growing trend. And the ARP survey in February 2026 gave real numbers. 7% of retirees have re-entered the labor market in the past 6 months, up from 6% the previous summer, and the trend has been moving in one direction. Nearly 1 in 8 older Americans said they planned or had returned to work in 2026. A Business Insider report in late 2025 found that people in their 70s and 80s returned to part-time jobs, not out of boredom, not out of a desire to stay busy, but out of economic need and no choice. 48% of respondents said economic stress was the main reason. Not passion, not the end, not preferences. Financial stress. The plans they make, the math they run, the preparations they make for the future, all conform to reality, and reality wins. Inflation is faster than the model predicts. Medical costs were higher than expected. Social Security covers fewer areas than the calculator shows. Returning to work in your 60s and 70s doesn't mean returning to the same role. Age discrimination in hiring is well documented. Available positions tend to favor lower wages and physical needs, and the job rarely requires decades of expertise. The senior engineer returned as an usher. The former marketing executive works part-time in retail. As the study of late career returns clearly shows, the gap between what they build and what they can use has its own weight. Not tired, is not a footnote to a few unfortunate cases. Starting from scratch is a measurable sign that a system that requires an entire generation to save 10 to 15%, receive Social Security, and call it a plan, is failing a large number of people who strictly follow its instructions. Let's get straight to the point of this video, because it is not meant to scare you or get you into a vortex. Those who can really retire in 2026 and beyond are not lucky. They are people who enter the market with accurate information, plan for what no one advertises, and create enough space in their strategy to absorb the constant shock. Stop using retirement as a date and start using it as a transition. On-off mode, working one day and stopping completely the next, harms people financially and psychologically in a gradual transition to avoid it. The best retirees tend to be those who gradually reduce their working hours, establish work goals and communities by the last day, and continue some form of income-generating activity in early retirement years. This is not retirement failure. This is a smarter version of the same goal. Create a budget that reflects reality, not optimism. HealthView Services and Fidelity's Retirement Health Calculator provide tools to generate specific forecasts based on actual age and health status, as part of a withdrawal strategy from day one, rather than as a last-minute addition when bills begin to arrive. Social Security timing decisions are more important than most people give, because deferring applications for benefits beyond full retirement age increases by about 8% a year. A guaranteed, inflation-adjusted return in a world with a return on safe assets of 4 to 5%. For a healthy person with other sources of income, delaying Social Security until age 70 is one of the highest financial decisions of a financial career. Your identity requires a plan, and the plan needs to be specific. What happened Tuesday afternoon? What neighborhoods besides work? What creates usefulness and competence at the end of a career? People who retired to one area, a goal, a project, a real community, showed significantly better health outcomes than those who retired from the other side without waiting. The study was not vague, and the results differed widely between the two groups. Revisit these numbers every year with current data, because no matter when the original plan was made, the world is changing. Medicare premiums rose 10% in 2026. Social Security trusts ran out earlier. Inflation assumptions for 2020 cannot be mapped to 2026. Plans made 5 years ago need to be tested against today's realities. Not the original projections of the year, the retirement models they sell you, the couple on the golf course, the convertible on the coast, the grandchildren on the beautiful dock at sunset, exist, and some exist. But those who came there did so because they clearly saw the real situation and had enough plans, not because they bought a spray-painted version and hoped it would last. Here are the numbers you should remember long after the video ends. According to a nationally representative sample of Allianz Life, S 2025 Annual Retirement Study, 64% of Americans said they were more afraid of running out of money than death. Nearly 2/3 of Americans said their fear was worse than death itself. This is not the anxiety of those with financial security. It is people's anxiety, and they can feel that no matter how calm, the math in their lives can be unsustainable. If you are somewhere in window 45 to 65, you are not there yet. But decisions made over the next 5 to 10 years about healthcare planning, social security timelines, building real goals and communities by the end of your career, testing your portfolio against the realities of 2026 will determine which version of retirement you end up living in. Run real numbers. Ask troubling questions. Don't let anyone sell you retirement plans based on comfort assumptions, because you work too hard and too long, and that is not the end. See you next time.